Hello, everyone, and welcome to Heart and Hand, the Rangers podcast. This is your extra show for the week. My name is Cammy Bell, and I thought it's an Old Firm weekend, what could be a very, very important Old Firm weekend. So I thought I'd bring you some international flavour, and that is to bring us a very, very good friend of Heart and Hand, but also a familiar voice on the NARSA pods as well, and that is Gary Gillan. Gary, thank you so much for joining me this week. It's a pleasure to have you on for what is going to be a momentous weekend, I think, ahead for Rangers.
Definitely. Cammy, happy, absolutely delighted to be here. Cammy, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the quite late invite. I can't help but feel that, I was like bottom of a list of a number of other people, I have to say. But I'm delighted to be here. And I think and not just this weekend, Cammy, I think the next 2 weeks is going to, it has the potential to shape our history, like our medium term history here. And I don't mean to overstate it. I genuinely believe that. I think this has got the opportunity for us to either continue doing what we've done for the last few years or really start to set the scene for some much better times ahead.
Yeah, well, I'll give the listeners a little peek behind the curtain because we're actually recording this on the Wednesday night. And because of the time difference, I thought this would be slightly easier for you. So, again, very much top of the list in terms of my choice of guests. And it means that we could have got a good bit of kind of chat and stuff. We wouldn't have been pressured with various different kind of time schedule stuff. What I do want to do before we get to the end of the show as well, Gary, we're going to talk about NARSA 2026.
Yes.
I always like to be able to have you on in the build-up. I suppose it's like the build-up to the build-up of NARSA because I'm always stunned by how much work goes into arranging all of these events. You and the team are heading to Nashville this year, and I'll say mid-June. It's the 11th to the 14th.
Yeah.
But I cannot let you go before we hear about how all that's going to come along as well. I am obviously very disappointed again with your choice of MC, Mr. Edgar. There is definitely better talent. I joke. I will never criticise the world's worst tourist since he's the boss and he runs things around here. But Gary, listen, let's get into. I'm keen to get your thoughts on obviously last weekend's 2-2 draw in the 2-hour game against Livingston at Almond Vale, and keen to get your thoughts obviously on how you felt we got on that day, your kind of key takeaways, and some interesting news which has come out across the course of the last few days about some possible injury concerns for Hearts and what beating Celtic at Ibrox on Sunday could mean for this league run-in. But let's do it all in order. And as I say, I was actually in Amsterdam last weekend, and it's disappointing for me because regular listeners will know I live in West Lothian. Livingston is 10 minutes along the road from me, and of course I would choose that particular weekend to go across to Amsterdam. I did find a pub to be able to watch what I thought was a very surprising game of football because my hope was, Gary, that we could put a little bit of this hoodoo that's been over us in terms of our away game performances. Livy, rooted to the bottom of the table, they will be relegated. Have obviously had a managerial shuffle in that David Martindale has went upstairs to director of football or sporting director, whatever his title is. Marvin Bartley has taken over the running of the team. I spoke last week on Extra where I'd said we need to remove the potential excuses of the terrible pitch and, how do we go out with a degree of gusto? And it felt, as I say, when the second goal went in and Livy went 2-0 up, you're just like, what is it that we have to do here to convince these players that they are in a title fight? I obviously a really strong comeback and certainly denied what I felt was one of the most ridiculous refereeing decisions I've ever seen in Scotland, and that is saying something. So it was a blow, but thankfully not a fatal one.
Yeah, I agree. I'd said on the NARSA pod a wee bit earlier this week, Cammy, that it was one of these, we have an opportunity, or the club, the manager specifically has an opportunity to really enhance or detract from our experience of going to watch the games, wherever we watch the games, by the team lineup. And sometimes, against Motherwell a couple of weeks before it, we're kind of looking at the team lineup going, I thought it was game to game, but it seems like this is a lineup that he's picked for the Hearts game on the weekend rather than the Motherwell game in the midweek, and it ends up being a wee bit puzzling, a wee bit confusing, and sometimes a wee bit demoralising. I didn't get that impression when I seen the lineup for the Livingston game. I thought, you know what, I think that's probably our strongest team that we could put out in terms of availability of the players for right now. And then the word that you used there, Cammy, was fight. And I think that still seems to be a wee bit of a shock and a surprise to this team collectively, and certainly some individuals in this team, when it becomes just that. It becomes a fight. You know, we need to earn the right to go and win these games. And a lot of times it's like we're just assuming or waiting for it to happen rather than going and forcing the issues. And I didn't think the beginning of the game was that bad per se. You know, I thought it was all right. You know, we did relatively well. We had the header that the goalie was, it was a brilliant save actually, the goalie made to put it onto the post. And then after that, it just seemed to be, we've seen this before, haven't we, Cammy? You know, where we have a wee bit of a decent start and then we just kind of settle in, wait and see what they're going to do, and then figure out what we're going to do. And then we make the basic mistakes that we make. And then we're in a situation where, unbelievably, based on the possession, based on the chances created, because we've had a lot of real stink bombs away from home specifically, where we haven't created a lot of chances and we haven't really been, really endeavouring to try and get into their third of the pitch to even do something meaningful up there. And it wasn't really the case on the weekend. There was just that lack of quality. And then we came up against a goalie, it seems like for the first time in quite some time, that had one of those games that he was doing really, really well with. So I thought in the beginning part, it was all right. Then I started to get a wee bit pissed off about the set piece coach and not the job he's doing, literally, because he's done great stuff for us. But it was more of a realization for me, Cammy, where I thought, you know what? It's not just the defending or attacking on set pieces. It's where we're giving set pieces away or where we're getting set pieces and things like that strategically. And we're super naive when it comes to that now. Like Tav, John Suter, these guys are giving away all these needless fouls in and around the area, and we're still not robust enough in the defensive setup that we have, regardless of who's playing, to be able to confidently say we're going to defend all of these sorts of things. So, it was one of those weird games. I think in the cold light of day, if we win the league, it's going to be a very valuable point and something that contributed to what it is we were doing. But it was everything in that particular game. The substitutes, he's throwing them on and maybe throwing some stuff against the wall so to see if it's going to stick. I thought they did well. I thought Bajrami specifically did well when he came on. The comeback, we had more than enough time to get that winning goal. And then what Ryan Lee and his team of merry men thought they were doing at the end was almost bordering on criminal. It really was. I had said on the pod on Monday, you should not be a referee. I'm a career coach. You can come and speak to me. I'm going to give you a free session to make sure you never referee another game. I thought it was shocking. Honestly, and I think the one annoyance for me, if I could just highlight one thing here, the one annoyance was that chance for Romans at the beginning came from a short corner, a really good cross in, and he's standing himself to be able to put the ball in. And then we never did that again during the whole game. Every other time, the ball was lumped in. And it was either from a set piece or from open play. There was no real invention there. First goal against, I'm going to give them a pass. Brilliant finish. The second goal, just an abomination. How many times have we seen guys in Tav's area, standing on their own with an ability to be able to control the ball and then shoot? So it's some good, some bad. Overall, I'm happy with the point, especially being 2-0 down, but against a team that hasn't won a league game since August, that's embarrassing.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all of that. I think, when the game was kind of unfolding, if you want to call it like that, and you see Jerome Pryor and the Livy goal, you mentioned about that save that he touches onto the post. There's another save, which I think is from Mikey Moore, if memory serves, where he gets a great hand to it and tips it over the bar. It just felt like, we've seen this movie before. The keeper just has the best game of his career, and you're thinking, Jesus, what do we have to do to be able to try and beat this guy? And then from You touched on the subs there, which I thought was a really great point. He obviously does make the change with Skovolson coming off for Miovski. I'm pretty convinced now that Miovski can play better when he has a partner, and obviously Chermiti was still in the park at this stage. We do go 2 goals down, but only 5 minutes later we then have the man advantage with the red card. And I will give Danny Rule his credit here, because I think we've questioned these substitutions from a critical perspective, but I felt these were quite positive. He obviously has to bring on Nadiri at this stage, brings on Asgard and takes Suter off. Bijrami, I agree with you. I think Bijrami has played well in the instances that we've seen him, Tannadice in particular. And Rangers were pressing and been able to get, to 90 minutes, knowing that there's going to be a fair amount of injury time, or extra time, I should say, getting into the referee decision is incredulous for me. I cannot understand, and I can't understand it, guys, from the perspective that he hasn't even given a free kick, and that is fundamentally the nub of the matter, because if he gives a free kick at that point with at least 2, if not 3 Livy players around him, then it does go to VAR, then it does go to denial of a goal scoring opportunity, and that's where you're right, it's incredibly poor refereeing. I just don't understand how neither he or his assistant referee in the line has seen that. But what my key takeaway from it, because I spoke before about this issue that we've got with away games, it didn't feel like Easter Road to me. Rangers were, far more aggressive in terms of, as I say, the use of substitutes, been able to try and get the ball forward. I think that point you made about Romans and the opportunity in the first half, I think that those are the things that Danny Rule will have taken away and said to them, this is where we can create chances, but if we get some joy out of them, then let's keep going. Let's continue to be able to try and impress in that situation. And that's where it felt different, because I would have been pissed off, obviously, if we hadn't got anything from the game. Mm-hmm. But I think I think it's fair to say if that game lasts another 5 or 10 minutes, Rangers come away with all 3 points. That's not the same conversation I'm having after Fir Park, after Easter Road, because we were pressing more, we were going for it. And I don't believe, by the way, that's just purely because of the numerical advantage we had of playing 11 versus 10. It felt like a mentality to me. Of course, you can criticise some of the options and the choices when players try and get shots away, but Pryor, as I said earlier on, has very much played his part in that. What I would be saying right now, if I was Danny Rule to that team, if I look beyond, obviously, the back-to-back Old Firm games, is when we go to Paisley in mid-March, is saying this is what we need to be able to repeat, but we need to do it from the first whistle. And we can put this thing of away games to bed, because what we have to do right now on this side of the split, for me at least, Gary, is we've got Paisley and we've got Falkirk. I don't think that we are in a position to turn around and say these will be games that would have been straightforward, because I can guarantee you most of us thought that before we went to Livingston last Sunday. So you need to basically attack them as if this is about us getting 3 points, and it doesn't matter if it's, pressing from the start but absorbing, or alternatively just, going at it in the last 20 minutes, assuming that the game's 0-0. I know which one I would prefer, but ultimately you're going to have to leave from Paisley and from Falkirk with 6 points. That's it, because I believe that we're far more confident when we play at home. So that, for me, is where I hope Danny Rule is taking the learnings from Livingston and saying, this is what we need to be able to do to make sure that we win on the road.
Yeah, I think, whatever Danny and his team's assessment is going to be, if you look at the month of February, it's quite obvious that what is intended, if we are genuinely going out to win each and every game, which I believe we are, and I believe him when he says that we are, what we've been doing hasn't been working. And I think Hibs and Motherwell, we got what we deserved from each of those games, and Livingston, I don't think we did. We had some faux pas in defence, a horrendous referee mistake, some could have been better finishing, and some brilliant saves by the goalie. So it was one of those ones, I didn't feel quite as down after Livingston as I did after Motherwell and Hibs. But from an away perspective, whatever you tried in each of those 3 games, even taking those in a wee microcosm just from a month perspective, whatever you tried didn't work because we were supposed to get 9 points and we got 3. So you need to try and take the best of whatever you've seen in each of those 3 games, specifically against Livingston, and then figure out what you're going to go and do next. But there has to be some level of change or alteration in tactics or mentality or approach that will give us a better opportunity to actually win the games, and it would be by going ahead and then staying ahead, and for the longest time we didn't I didn't have that. Oh, here we go again. It's only 1-0 at the end of the game. We'll wait to see when we lose a goal, a la Motherwell. I didn't have that for quite some time there, and now you're kind of like, oh, I don't know, is that creeping back in if we're losing that type and style of mentality. But in short, whatever we did in February didn't work. Take the best parts of that and employ that at Falkirk, employ that at St Mirren, and just go. And I'm with you, Cammy. Like, go out and do what you need to do in the first half. 3-0 up in 25 to 30 minutes. I'm happy with that. I don't mind being a wee bit bored for the next 60 minutes as long as we can see the game out with no injuries and no lost goals or anything like that, because it's coming right down to the crunch time now. I don't know about you, but I've been doing the mathematics for quite some time about what's going to happen, what could happen here, there, and everywhere. And I'd said on the pod the other day, we've got 10 games left, and based on current form, that's going to be 20 points that we would get from 10 games, based on our away form and our home form. And is that enough to win the league? It probably isn't. It probably isn't. So we need to try and figure out a way to start to, as you say, kind of end that hoodoo.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is going to sound incredibly basic, but the 2 key things for me, I think, guys, is cut out the stupidity. And I mean that from the defence, whether you're at home or away, because, we've been spoiled, right? And I will say it, we've been spoiled where we had a consistent run of form and clean sheets, which I think really benefited us because I think it gave that defence growth. And what I mean from that is that they started to lean in and trust each other because, I wasn't convinced by Fernandes to begin with. He's making me believe in it a bit more. I think that, the challenge that we've got is from a right back position. I would play Sterling there for the rest of the season if I could, because I think James Tavernier right now is limited. So even if you have to give Sterling the majority of the game, then okay, grand. But because we are now in this run-in, if we were 15 games before, I would say, well, that's fine, we can chop and change because there's still room to spare. There isn't room to spare any longer. Yeah. And so it's the nature of the goals that we're losing. You go back to Hearts at Ibrox and 2 players not talking to each other, Hearts capitalise on it. I don't think that your central defender should be out-jumped or out-foxed by anyone that, by and large, physically should be able to control, and he has to be able to go and attack the ball better than he did for the Hearts second. And then you look, as you rightly said, at the Livy goals, which I think are preventable. Yes, I know all goals technically should be, but it feels like at times we give too many gifts. And the second thing that I think we need to be able to do from the basics perspective is 1 goal isn't enough. Because you need to be able to try and provide a cushion. So we saw it at Fir Park, where really positive start, Bright, a very, very good goal to get us in front. So you can see that the capability is definitely there, but it's not enough. And yes, of course, I'd love to win every game 3-4, 5-0. Of course you would. But it's the second goal that starts to calm everybody down a little bit. If you can get a 2-goal lead, then ultimately I think that this Rangers team can play better football when it's sitting at a confidence level. I can't really apply that rule to Old Firm games because I just think they're a microcosm of themselves at the best of times anyway. But at the same time, this is where, outside of those Old Firm games, even post-split, what my concern to now, and I think, we're the same because I have done the same mathematics you have. If you think about likely Tynecastle, Parkhead, Easter Road, for example, or I forget if it'll be Easter Road or Fir Park, you need to be able to make sure that when we get into those 5 games post-split, we are in the best possible position we can be, that of those 9 points away from home, how do we make sure that we don't shoot ourselves in the foot by falling at the final hurdle?
Yeah. and it's not going to be easy. And that's when it's a genuine, literal game by game, based on exactly what's happened the week before, based on what the league table looks like that week. But the fact that we're running out of runway, and another thing I said, Cammy, on our pod the other day there was, Danny Rule comes out and says, "I'm convinced this is going to go to the last game of the season." You know what? I don't want it to go to the last game of the season. I want us to win it before the last game of the season. But there's that subliminal, it's not even subliminal message, that micro message of, don't worry, it's going to go to the last game anyway. So if we drop some points just now, we'll pick them back up at some point later. That was all right maybe 5, 6, 7, 10 games ago, but right now it's not. Next week it's going to be single figures. And then that's when, as they say over here, the rubber hits the road, and we're in a situation where every single point is a prisoner. And I think it will be, like, I know that it's a bit cliched, but it will be whatever drama happened the week before, whatever other people are doing, is a point okay at Tynecastle on this particular occasion because we're already ahead, or is it gung-ho and it's all, all shoulders to the wheel sort of thing to get 3 points in every single game? And I don't know how tactical it becomes then. I really don't. I mean, we obviously want to win 10 games in a row and then put everything aside and hopefully get this championship over the line. It's just not quite as easy as that because of all the external and sometimes internal things that are surrounding the team at that point, and that's what makes it exciting.
Yeah, and I think, when you look at the league table, and this is where this weekend's game can play a pivotal part in that, because if we are able to go ahead of Celtic and go ahead by, the gap at the moment now is 2 with the game in hand, so if we can go ahead by 5 and put more pressure on them against that game against Aberdeen that obviously was rescheduled. They've got that next week, I think. I think that the interesting thing will be, because Hearts have now announced that they've got a couple of injuries. Stuart Finlay in particular, the new signing Agu is out for the rest of the season. Finlay's looking like it could be 5 to 6 weeks. Lawrence Shankland has obviously been out. Devlin has been out. This was where I had made mention of this a number of weeks ago, Gary, where I'd said, look, what Hearts need to realise, that if you're going to have to go the distance in this, it is a marathon, not a sprint. But when you pick up injuries or suspensions, or you have any challenges around that, you need to make sure that your squad can come in and play with it. Now, Hearts take on Aberdeen at Tynecastle on Saturday, so we're going to have to go with the mentality that that's going to be a Hearts win, which puts them 7 ahead of us. Obviously, if we beat Celtic, we bring that back to 4. So from our perspective, what I think would be very, very interesting is if we are able to beat Celtic on Sunday, and I'm struggling to see a reason as to why we can't, all of a sudden that bin fire that's happening across at Parkhead just gets 10 gallons worth of fuel poured onto it. And I think that then carries into the Aberdeen game. Now, I'm not for a minute suggesting that Celtic are out of the title race if it's a case that we do win on Sunday. But what I do think it does is it absolutely stokes the fire of their internal disharmony. They will hate losing to us regardless. I just feel at the moment just now, this is an opportunity for them to give them a major body blow and then put the emphasis back on them to be able to try and recover. And then very possibly a 3-horse race becomes a 2-horse race. And then it's pretty much between us and Hearts in terms of how it goes on game by game.
I agree. I mean, hard to disagree with any of that. I don't know that Hearts and Aberdeen is a gimme. I don't know if it's a free shot. Aberdeen are kind of up and down. A stuffy draw last night with Dundee United there, and they'll probably have an eye on the Celtic game as well. They've still got a wee bit of disruption to do. That they're probably out of the top 6 race, but maybe not. Like, it's not mathematically impossible for them to get there. But however, let's assume that it is a home game and they're going to actually take it over the line. I think I'm with you. I don't see any reason, based on what's happened in the games this season, based on where the teams are at right now, and based on they are just probably one result away, and this weekend is hopefully it, from like a complete and utter meltdown, to your gallons of fuel on the fire. they're almost just hanging on by a thread to say, well, wait a wee second. If we were actually to win that game, we go ahead with a game in hand, and then we're a wee bit closer and things like that. I was chatting with my nephew who supports the other side on the weekend, and he'd given up a few weeks ago, actually. But I haven't had that full feel of them actually giving up, because there's that wee glimmer of hope. And what I'd said to him last week was, you could come into that game with 3 defeats on the spin. We could be the 4th, and then the next again game is not a guarantee. It could be the 5th, and then we could beat you in a cup, and that could be 6 in a row. To go with the 8 or however many it was at the beginning of the season. And I'm planting a seed for him just to say, by the way, I'm here. Uncle Gaz is here if you need anyone to talk to if we win these games. But based on form, based on the fact that we've proven that these big games, Hearts and Celtic specifically, are we don't have to fear them anymore. We had dodgy results against Hearts earlier in the season. There's zero reason why we shouldn't go out there and apply ourselves completely and utterly exactly like we did in the Old Firm game at Parkhead last time, and just take it to them, and just, do what we said we want to do against Falkirk and St Mirren, is just put them away early and make it an actual party and have them absolutely trembling in their shoes. Because what happens, Cammy, is it becomes very, very distracting. All the outside noise, all the balls being thrown on the pitch. We've had that ourselves, and some people like it, some people don't. The players are kind of like, what's going on here? And then these distractions end up just causing free fall. We've experienced it, and they're just on the brink. So if we don't take this opportunity, the best opportunity that I can remember in years and years, to really just put our foot on their throats and just put them away, that would be a shame on us moment.
Yeah, the ideal situation, I think, for me as well, guys, as we're talking about some of the away form, is for the first time in many a year, we could go into the 4th Old Firm league game where it's meaningless for them, but pivotal for us.
Yeah.
And if they have like a bad week and a half, for example, and they get pumped against Stuttgart, we beat them in the league, they drop points against Aberdeen, and then we put them out the Scottish Cup, then yeah, I think it's full on riot time. And then by that stage, I think, like you say, the fans give up. I think the players will sack it off as well, because of, as I say, all of that disharmony that's going on is just going to get even worse. So even if we could go to Parkhead at that stage and it feels different, I think that it's far better doing that than being able to go into it with any kind of form of mega intensity. That would be, for me, the ideal scenario. So let's hope that we're sitting there a week on Monday. Putting their fans to one side for a moment. Oh, and by the way, just in case any of you are listening, I know that we've berated referees, but when you try and chop off a player's arm when he's holding on to you, it's considered violent conduct. I know that's a grey area for some of you, and now you're trawling through all of the previous games to see as to where it's happened previously. It hasn't, because as I say, you can't chop off a player's arm. I just wanted to clear that up for anyone listening from that persuasion. But all joking aside, Gary, what are you looking for Danny Rule to be able to start with on Sunday? Because there's been a lot of conversation around what we've seen in terms of playing the 2 up top. And I know that he made the starting lineup the way it was against Livy because Nadiri had a slight knock, so although he was available, he may not have been able to play the full 90. But going on the assumption that everyone is available, would you like to see us try and contain and keep that midfield a little bit tighter and maybe try and hit them in the flanks? Or would you like to be able to see us continue with that I say 2 up top, but not necessarily 2 playing side by side?
I think I'd be more inclined to do the 2 up top, and more so as long as we're keeping the midfield tight, because that's where we've completely allowed them to dominate for so long, and needlessly so over the years, from a Scott Brown perspective, and then latterly Callum McGregor perspective. But if we can kind of put Raskin on McGregor, for example, and kind of nullify that, the 2 up top, and the reason I say that is it's such a novelty to watch from my personal viewing pleasure perspective. And other teams are very unused to us doing that. And having the the height and the strength and the presence that we have with the guys up top, I would definitely be going for two up top and just really going in round about them to see what they've got. And, you know, Chermiti just seems to have the golden touch against them. He just can't seem to not play well in the bigger games. So let's keep that going. And the big man, you know, if he's fit, and assuming that he is, he seems to just be reveling. I know it's only a couple of weeks, but he seems to be, you know, giving us something a wee bit different than we've had before. So I think the element of, if I could say surprise, you know, they can certainly look at videos and such, but nobody has enough data to be able to, and footage, to be able to go back and say, this is exactly what we can expect. So there's that element of novelty in that. And I would just love there to be a wee bit more presence in their box for a wee change.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right in terms of the presence. What I am looking forward to, and I'm crossing everything to make sure that I'm able to revel in this come Sunday afternoon, is this feels now it feels like a more physical team.
Yeah.
And I think that was something that was a big gap in games like this, where and I'll caveat this by saying I don't think this is a great Celtic team, but in previous years we've made them look like great Celtic teams for the point that you've just mentioned. But now it feels, with the addition of Chukwueze in particular, who I think has to start, because I'd be very comfortable putting Chukwueze next to Callum McGregor.
Yeah.
I would give Skov Olsen a run against Kieran Tierney. I think Romans has got plenty of pace about him, but he's also physical as well. And Nadiri, I think, looks like he can move people out the way. The challenge, I think, for us with being able to do all of that is, by all means, use winning your one-on-ones and your physical battles to be able to create chances and to create space. But we need to make sure that we finish them. And that is where, for me, the question mark is with Chermiti. You're absolutely right, by the way. I do agree. It's not a slight on him in terms of saying that he hasn't played better. He absolutely has played better. There's no doubt around that in my mind. What I think will be interesting, or not, is if he was going to drop slightly and play Nadiri slightly further forward, because I fundamentally believe Nadiri can be the better finisher. What I'm worried about, guys, is that we get a couple of golden opportunities and they fall to Chermiti, who at this point in time feels like he will absolutely slot it into a corner or in the postage stamp, or he'll hit it over one of the stands. That I don't want it to come down to those types of fine margins, because ultimately you're working hard, but you're not able to get the end result. And that's something which has been a criticism of this Rangers team up to this point, but we've got better at it. I think you saw it against Hearts, and Chermiti played his part in that for sure. And I think you saw it against Livy, but this is where everybody has to be able to understand the significance of this game means you can't shy away from the challenge, whether it's pushing your guy out the way, whether it's about winning that second ball, or whether or not it's about taking those chances. Everybody has to make sure that whatever they produce is the absolute best it can be.
Yeah. And I think it seems to be inherently understood for the team in the big games, you know, in the, you know, and I'll you know, the last Old Firm game for sure, the last Hearts game for sure, where it becomes instinct. It becomes something that, you know, the fans play the part, of course, and then we get that opportunity to say, right, this is what the game is going to be. This is typically what you can expect in the game, and they've already lived it as a team already. So I don't know that there's that much reinforcement or reminding or anything like that, other than the tactical nuances that will come with, you know, with the setup for the team and what they're planning to try and get from the first half and the second half as things progress through the game. I don't really have a fear of that. The one main thing, and I think it builds upon your point there, Cammy, is that if we've gone through some spells where, you know, 2, 3, 4, 5 games in a row, we've created an abundance of chances, you know, very high teens, maybe low 20s of chances. And that's, and our conversion rate with the majority of those chances is a wee bit lower, you know, maybe 20% or so, something like that. But there's been also other games where we've been completely bereft of creating chances, and you're looking and you're like, I mean, the stats say we created 3 chances. I don't remember I don't remember those 3 chances, such were maybe they're a wee bit generous on the stats. If we can get, however they tactically set it up, to create chance after chance after chance in these big games, I think we've got a couple of fearless young guys up there that would bank on themselves putting those chances away against the bigger team to get their CV completely bolstered by big goals against big teams in meaningful games, to see where that's going to take them in their career. And they want it, they're thirsty for it, they believe they can do it, and I think we do too, which is a remarkable turnaround from the earlier part of the season.
What's your midfield going into it? Guys, I'm keen to get your thoughts in terms of whether or not we look at bringing Diamandi back in.
I would. I think he seems to have taken, however it was communicated to him, and however he convalesced or recovered from that when he didn't get to the African Cup of Nations, he's been a different player for us. So I was delighted that he never went, and just from having a body available perspective, but not hugely thrilled because he wasn't playing that great up to and including the month of December and such. But he can be trusted in these bigger games, and he just seems to have that little edge in the bigger games where he has contributed positively in Old Firm games before and seems to revel in it. He just seems to enjoy the atmosphere, the big game. He has a trick up his sleeve. He has just a greater presence and awareness in these games in particular than maybe someone else. So I would be starting him for sure. Maybe he doesn't finish the game, but I would be starting him for sure to give us that poison and craft and a wee bit of ingenuity in the midfield there.
And I'm assuming that's alongside Raskan and Chukwani.
Yeah.
That's what's interesting for me, because it was the old Firm New Year game where I was on a show. I can't remember if it was on Extra or not, but I was talking about rewatching the 3-2 game, the Eagleman winner.
Yeah.
And obviously the first 2 goals, there's a concerted involvement between Raskin, who, scores from the corner, and he also then sets up Diamandi. And it was just amazing to think of at that time as to how far forward both of them were. I'd love to be able to get back to that. I think you saw how productive it could be with the Raskin goal against Motherwell. But what I'm hoping for is that when you've seen the physical prowess, as I mentioned already, of Chukwani, but also his athleticism, Chukwani's able to handle all that, and he will just simply say, listen, just get forward.
Yeah.
Just get forward. You two, give me 10, 15 yards, but you don't need to sit and come back all the time. It absolutely wrecks my head when I see Raskan coming back to sit in alongside the centre halves to be able to get the ball for a bye kick, because I think he can produce better being able to go further forward. And again, that Motherwell goal, I think showed that. I also would start Diamandi. I am not hugely keen on playing Mikey Moore out on the side because I think he's more central. But I think Mikey Moore, as you saw from his goal at Parkhead, he wants to play in games like this. It's also the main reason as to why he's up here from Spurs. Scovolson, I think, is also that option as well. I would not be surprised to see Gassama play at some point. I'm a bit of a defender of Gassama at times, Gaz, because I think he's played a lot of football, and I think we see what he's capable of doing when you think of the final goal against Hearts. He comes on and he makes a great run from within his own half, very cleverly picks up Chermiti, who obviously is able to slot home. So I would probably start with Moore and Scovolson with Gassama to come in at some stage.
Yeah, I agree. I was a wee bit critical of Gassama on the weekend there because he hadn't done a whole hell of a lot in the game other than drawing the red card. The thing I liked about it was when he came off, he wasn't as huffy self that he's been a couple of times before it, and I think, honestly, I mean, he's a young guy. He's contributed, very well during the season here, and I think it's the winger's curse. And, where we're hoping for someone to dribble past every player in the opposition team 2 or 3 or 4 times every game, set up a goal, score a few on his own, and do kind of what Brian Laudrup used to do back in the day. And then it's not until you see the fruits of their labour over a concerted period of time, say, for example, a whole season, that you think, man, oh man, he did really, really well for us. But we just remember in and of the moment, you've been garbage today, disappear. And don't let the door hit your ass in the way out, because we're tense and we're a wee bit stressed out. So he's contributing. I agree. Him coming on as an impact sub later in the game with his pace and his inventiveness, and we'll get a bit of space against them to be able to play. I think that would be, kind of back to what Danny Rule said. I think it was a couple of weeks back, where he says it's very strategic about who starts and who finishes the games. It's not just a random thing. Sometimes it's forced upon you through an injury or there's something tactically that you got wrong. But there is an actual process to saying, and you're going to come on at this point, and by that time, that guy is going to be ragdolled all over the place, and you're going to get an easier ride, or there's more opportunity for them to be tired, or whatever that looks like. So, I'm with you. I think he's done well for us this season. I did say at the beginning of the week there that I was a bit worried about him. Just the fact that he isn't hitting the highlights or isn't hitting the heights. But then I think, as you mentioned, what he did for the fourth goal against Hearts was absolutely incredible. The opportunities to go down, he didn't choose them. Opportunities to kind of cut back and keep the ball, and he just chose to drive forward, trying to draw in a foul that never came. And it was absolutely brilliant. And then getting the red card against Livingston there as well. It's not nothing. And it's actually impactful for us, positively impactful for us as a team. It's just maybe not as much as we were expecting, or maybe not as much as we were getting in the beginning part of the season when it was all new and fresh and exciting. But he's still got a big part to play, and I agree. Off the bench would be my choice.
Yeah, well, we will see how Danny Rule approaches it. Gary, just before we finish up for this week, really keen to pick your brains on the NARSA convention in June. You guys are heading to Nashville, which I'm sure will be a brilliant location for you. We've got a number of Bears, I think, already planning on heading over. Obviously, our very own David Edgar will be going over and doing his excellent job, as per usual, of emceeing the event. But how are things shaping up at the moment?
Things are going really well. We solidified our guest profile just this past week there with the announcement of Derek Ferguson coming into the fold, and our VIP ex-players now involved. There's a 9 in a row element to the VIPs, where we have Derek Ferguson, Scott Nisbet, Davy Robertson and Mark Walters as our VIP guests. And the reason that's quite poignant for us is that we did a survey after Kissimmee last year and said to everyone on our email distribution list, which is almost a couple of thousand people, what do you want to see? What would entice you to come back to these events? What would entice you to try it for the first time? And give us a wee bit of, warts and all. What do you like? What don't you like? And one of the things was, we love the guests, but it would be nice to see some different people there, hear some different stories. So we took that really to heart, and Brian Campbell, our convention director, Alan McWatt, our new president, and myself have been busy in the background, really shaking the trees to say who would be available, who would be a good fit, who would fit together. And we've really employed some help from other people. It's been a big network of people really helping us get those guests. So we're delighted. And each of the 4 guys that we've got are genuinely excited and excitable about the opportunity to come and spend some time with us. And the great thing is that we're supplementing that this year. We've got Stuart Hay from The Journey Back coming over to help us with some entertainment that we're still in the process of essentially establishing right now in terms of what the itinerary is going to look like. So we've got a wee bit of traditional model there, Cammy, in terms of we're going to have the Tam Plunkett Blue Night as a homage to one of our founding fathers. We're going to have the Walter Smith Memorial Grand Banquet with a wee bit of a twist. We're going to have the Welcome Night. We're going to have the golf, the Davy Cooper Memorial Golf Tournament, but we're doing top golf this time to try and be a wee bit more inclusive and a wee bit more fun, and for golf of all levels. And we're still in the process of organising the Absent Friends football match as well. So we've got the traditional parts and we've got some new stuff in there. And to supplement what Stuart Hay's going to be doing, we also confirmed David Mason, the Rangers historian, to come over and give us a presentation on the story of Rangers. And again, David has been brilliant in terms of giving us access to potential future guests and things like that, and just really supporting things behind the scenes and through his socials and such. And it's so there's like something for everyone. And I think you and I have chatted over the years that I've said that in the past, and I've meant it in the past, but it's something for everyone and then some this time, because you add in the fact that that's the World Cup opening weekend and we've got the Scotland game on the Saturday night. And so there's going to be, we never typically get a chance. There's the odd time we coincide with the Champions League final and folks go to watch that as an occasion because it's the Champions League final, they're interested in football, they want to see what it's like. But this is the first time in my time, and I've been going to conventions since back in 2008, that we've actually had a meaningful game that's meaningful for us. You know, we've got the Haiti game on Saturday night, 8 o'clock Nashville time. So we're actually heading down to do some recon this weekend. So when this show airs, I will be stoating about the streets of Nashville, trying to figure out where I am, what I'm doing, and what they're all talking about. But we're going to be meeting with the hotel. We're going to be looking at some of the locations and venues and things like that. So we supplement all that with our DJ Angry Bear, which is our communications director, Colin Bowman from the Orlando Rangers Supporters Club, as our DJ. So it's one of these ones really, really coming together. As I say, we've finalised the list now of people that we've got, and now it's really genuinely all about marketing and communication. And if someone's on the fence about, you know, coming over, offering them up an opportunity to have a conversation to say, why are you on the fence? Is there anything we can do to give you a wee bit of a boost to make a decision either way, hopefully for the positive, to give us that chance to celebrate together? The team makes a big difference to that. We get a good result on the weekend and do some smart marketing after that. People are going to start to get excited because we are in touch with the club and we are trying to get a commitment from the club to say, if we have a shiny thing to wave in front of our faces at the end, is it going to be in Nashville? We'll give you a clue. The answer better be yes. So we're doing a whole bunch of things, but it's going to be a genuine experience. And I say all this having never been to Nashville. Most other people that are on the committee have some experience with that, and I might fall in love with the place this weekend, or I might be like, oh, that's kind of cool, and you know, it's okay. I don't know. I mean, by all accounts, it's just absolutely dynamite there. So I'm really looking forward to that. So you've got the destination of Music City. You've got a 9 in a row contingent of people that we've never had before. Save for Davy Robertson. He was over in Vegas there. We've got the familiarity of David doing his MC stuff, as you say, brilliant on that. And then we've got the class and the real genuine club connection of David Mason being there, educating us at the same time, because there's a lot of historical things that I could really do with being educated on. I joined the Rangers family when I joined the Rangers family, and I've kind of paid more attention to what's happening in the now and the future rather than in the past. So that opportunity, and we are going to get VIP representation from the club. It's yet to be determined who it's going to be, but the club have been very supportive of us over the years. So it's a genuine, literal experience that we're going to have this year for Destination NARSA, as we're calling it, and I can't wait. So if anyone out there is in any way looking for any more information than I've shared right now, I know I've been talking a lot about this here, please don't hesitate to get in touch with me at rangersscc@hotmail.com. That's 2 S's and 2 C's. And I'll answer it personally and I'll give you the information, and we would love to see you there, because now it's all about solidifying the ticket sales, because they've been a wee bit slow. People typically, I'll get my room booked first, and then I'll get my flights booked, and then I'll make sure there's a sweet spot in getting the American dollars, and then eventually I'll book my tickets. That's very difficult for us to manage in terms of our knowledge and quite frankly, our working capital to put the event on, not knowing how many people are coming. So if you are coming, please book your tickets as quickly as possible so that we can manage to know and understand how many people we're having to manage when they get there.
No, brilliant, mate. And every single time we've talked with an upcoming convention, as I say, always, I've got to absolutely take my hat off to you and everyone involved in terms of organising it, because it's a labour of love. But again, I've never spoken to anyone who's ever come back from a convention disappointed. Just to also continue on, where if you've got any more information and you'd like to get it, head on to the NARSA site, which is narsa.ca. And have a listen to Gary's pod as well. He does an excellent pod, regularly accessible on the site as well. And as I say, the build-up will continue. And I'll use this pod, Gary, to use as a reference point to say when you came on extra back in February, that's when the Rangers league winning run started.
Oh, I hope so.
So that's the benchmark we've hit so far.
I love it.
Love it. That will do us for this week. Thank you to Mike Lee and Paul Myers. Thank you to you all for listening. If you'd like to hear more from us, especially in the build-up to the Old Firm double headers, then please head on over to patreon.com/Heart and Hand. If you're not there already, why not? We've got a community of near 10,000 subscribers on that site, listening to Rangers content every single day of the week. And why would you not get the battle fever on by listening to us in the build-up for the games coming up as well? The most important thanks I have to give is to a brilliant guest as always, Gary Gillan. Gary, listen, I know that we were working out our time zone differences and stuff as well. You absolutely were top of my list for the guest. Don't ever think that you're not. I will get you back on before the end of the season because I'd love to hear more about the NARSA updates as well. But thank you so much for joining me. It's been a pleasure.
My pleasure. Absolutely great to connect with you again, Cammy. And I believe what you just said there in terms of our title-winning run starting this weekend. I believe that, and I'm going to manifest that into reality. And I really look forward to us talking about this in the future, my friend.
Absolutely. David will be back with you in Flagship to unpack the Celtic game, and I will be back with you next week to talk about another Old Firm game. So stay tuned for that. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll speak to you again next week. Bye-bye.